Welcome to this presentation on fallacies. The first fallacy to explore is the fallacy of accent. This occurs when the meaning of an argument changes according to which word or phrase in it is emphasized. Consider, I didn't take the test, which translates, I have not taken or completed the test, to, I didn't take the test, meaning I have not physically taken the test. The next fallacy is the ad hominem fallacy, which is a personal attack and occurs when we disagree with someone's conclusion, but instead of presenting a counter-argument, we attack the person who made the argument. In this case, the student in the chair remarks to the professor, "I'm not listening, you're bald and you say your R's funny, your argument is invalid." Clearly, the student is personally attacking the professor rather than attacking the evidence of his lecture in illustration of this fallacy. The Amphiboly fallacy occurs when there is a grammatical mistake in an argument which allows more than one conclusion to be drawn. In this case, the sign to the right reflects that the toilet is only for disabled, elderly, pregnant children. With regard to this example, if someone meets that descriptor, there are more issues than the sign's issue, which clearly represents an amphiboly. Commas should separate the people in the list. Using correct grammar would clarify the intent of the sign. The fallacy of appeal to force, or scare tactics, occurs when we use or threaten to use force, whether it be physical, psychological, or legal, in an attempt to get another person to back down on a position and to accept our conclusion as correct. Scare tactics are used in politics, advertising, education, parenting, etc. In this political cartoon, an elephant representing the Republican Party scares pedestrians on the street, shouting, "ISIS is coming to get you. Obama is a weak leader. The USA is falling apart. Ebola is going to eat you alive. Boo." Here it is obvious that this political cartoon is arguing that Republicans are using scare tactics to frighten constituents into voting Republican. The fallacy of appeal to ignorance does not imply that we are stupid. Instead, it means that we are ignorant of the means of proving or disproving something. We fall into this fallacy whenever we argue that something is true simply because no one has proven it false, or that something is false because no one has proven it true. Not knowing the answer can be confounding and confusing, and may lead certain people to argue obliviously, as illustrated in this comic image of two bunnies who see a meteor flying through the sky. Unable to explain the phenomenon, one bunny says to the other, "Look, it's a strange beam of light moving through the sky. I don't know what it is, so it must be aliens visiting us from another planet." We all want answers, but to make up answers based on false information only breeds additional ignorance. In the fallacy of appeal to pity, we try to evoke a feeling of pity in the other person when pity is irrelevant to the conclusion. Pity can be a powerful persuader, and so it is often used to appeal to people's emotions. Consider this image of a pitiful-looking dog. The caption reads, "Starved, abandoned, left to suffer. Help us save lives for as little as 60 cents per day." Clearly, such imagery may pull on some people's heartstrings, raising more donations. In begging the question, the conclusion is simply a rewording of a premise. By making our conclusion the same as the premise, we are assuming that the conclusion is true rather than offering proof for it. This fallacy is also known as circular reasoning. Has anyone ever talked circles to you? Consider the example of begging the question shared here. Here is a graphic of the human brain accompanied by the text, "The brain is the most important organ you have, according to the brain." This type of reasoning circles back to the premise, making it your conclusion, and so forth. The fallacy of composition errs in the opposite direction of the fallacy of division. The fallacy of composition involves an erroneous inference from the parts to the whole by drawing a conclusion about the entire set from the characteristics of the members of that set or group. In this example of a fallacy of composition, the girl is creating a rendition of the Statue of Liberty made out of paper clips. The boy, using little imagination, is noting, "They're paper clips. You can't make something beautiful out of paper clips." In this example, the boy infers that because paper clips are not beautiful, anything created from paper clips also will not be beautiful. In the fallacy of division, we make an erroneous inference from the characteristics of an entire set or group about a member of the group or set. In doing so, we incorrectly assume that each member of a group has the characteristics of the group in general. In this illustration of a fallacy of division, the penguin is committing a fallacy of division when he notes, "Penguins are black and white. Some old TV shows are black and white. Therefore, some penguins are old TV shows. As illustrated, false assumptions are all too often drawn based on mistaken beliefs. Equivocation occurs when a key term in an argument is ambiguous. That is, when it has more than one meaning and the meaning of the term changes during the course of the argument. This is most likely to happen when the meaning of the key term is not clear from the context of the argument. The fallacy of equivocation is demonstrated here through the comic strip where a man is stealing something from the store and the store manager shouts, "Hey, you can't take that, it's stealing!" In response, the thief states, "So what? They steal all the time in baseball. If it's okay for baseball players to steal, logically it's okay for me to steal too." Scratching his head, the store manager replies, "Well, you have a point." Walking out of the store with the stolen goods, the thief states, "That was easy." Clearly, the ambiguous word being referenced here is stealing, as there are multiple meanings being referenced. The fallacy of false dilemma reduces responses to complex issues to an either-or choice. By doing so, this fallacy polarizes, stands on issues, and ignores common ground or other solutions. The false dilemma explored here is the either-or fallacy. Either you are a feminist or you are a sexist misogynist. There is no box marked other. Such a fallacy clearly has a polarizing effect, as the person is made to feel like there are only two categories of people to which to belong, whereas we clearly know that is not the case. The fallacy of hasty generalization is used often. When used properly, generalization is a valuable tool in both the physical and social sciences. We commit the fallacy of hasty generalization when we generalize from a sample that is too small or biased. With this example of a hasty generalization, we see an image of tea being served with the caption, "Her visitor was English, so she was certain of the beverage to offer." Too often in life, people draw conclusions based on assumptions or stereotypes. Strive to reduce unfounded biased thinking in your life. With an inappropriate appeal to authority, it is generally appropriate in an argument to use the testimony of a person who is an authority or expert in the field. However, we commit the fallacy of inappropriate appeal to authority when we look to an authority in that field that is not under investigation. In this example of advertising, we see singer and actress Marilyn Monroe being used as an authoritative voice regarding shampoo. She is clearly happy with the product, and the consumer is left to assume that she looks beautiful due to the powers of the shampoo. If this were an appropriate appeal to authority, a chemist or industry leader would be a more appropriate authoritative voice to use when promoting certain shampoos. The fallacy of loaded question assumes a particular answer to another unasked question. This fallacy is sometimes used in a court of law when a lawyer demands a yes or no answer to a question such as, "Have you stopped beating your girlfriend?" Loaded questions are asked with a hidden agenda attached. Consider this additional illustration of two girls standing in front of a school building. One girl is asking the question, "Have you stopped cheating on tests?" Inherent in asking such a question is the idea that the girl has previously cheated on tests. Loaded questions serve the asker's agenda and contain unjustified or controversial reasoning. Naturalistic fallacies confuse moral judgments with non-moral ones. With such fallacies, is implies ought. A fallacy illustrating how is implies ought is shared here. The fallacy on display purports that because women can have children, they ought to have children. This reasoning is flawed because some women may choose not to have children, may have a health condition that a pregnancy would complicate, or may have a personal reason not to have a child. Just because a person can do something does not mean that a person should do something. The fallacy of popular appeal occurs when we appeal to a popular opinion to gain support for our conclusion. The most common form is the bandwagon approach, in which a conclusion is assumed to be true simply because everyone believes it or everyone is doing it. In this illustration of the fallacy of popular appeal, sheep are jumping off a cliff. While jumping off the cliff, one sheep notes that Liz says to jump off the cliff. In reply, another sheep, who is also jumping off the cliff, says, "Liz, Liz, Liz, if Liz told you not to jump off a bridge, would you do it?" Posing this question is a nod to the popular idiom reply usually said by parents to children who have caved to peer pressure. "If so-and-so told you to jump off the bridge, would you?" Just because one person does something, it does not make it right for all people to do something. Because our brains tend to impose order on how we see the world, we may see order and causal relationships where they don't exist. When a person assumes without sufficient evidence that one thing is the cause of another, that person is committing the fallacy of questionable cause. Causal relationships can be observed without much awareness. For instance, consider this cartoon featuring a mom and dad and their daughter, illustrating this principle. In the first segment, the daughter says to her dad, "Dad, do you store your socks flat or rolled up?" The dad answers, "Flat. Why?" The daughter answers, "Well, this is that as people grow older, they tend to store their socks flat rather than rolled up." The mom chimes in, stating, "Honey, maybe you'd feel younger if you rolled your socks up." The dad then states, "And here I've been wasting my time exercising and eating oat bran." Here, evidence seems to promote the relationship that growing old means storing your socks flat rather than rolled up. There is not sufficient evidence supporting such a relationship, whereas the dad indicated there should be a causal relationship between eating better and exercising and feeling younger. This fallacy can also be typified by superstitions, such as the idea that if you will have 7 years bad luck if you break a mirror. According to the slippery slope fallacy, if we permit a certain action, then all actions of this type, even the most extreme ones, will soon be permissible. In other words, once we start down the slope, or to vary the metaphor, get a foot in the door, there is no holding back. We commit the slippery slope fallacy when evidence does not support this predicted outcome. This accompanying comic strip illustrates various court cases that the man argues will lead to a dangerous chain of events. Each segment features a slope where a man is shouting with two girls looking down on him from the higher point on the slope. The first segment notes, Loving versus Virginia, 1967. The man is yelling at the girls, "Just you watch, now that black can marry white, people marrying house pets is just around the corner." The second segment notes, Roe versus Wade, 1973. The man is yelling at the girls, "Now that abortion is legal, we're certain to make it legal to commit infanticide in a year now." The third segment notes, Goodridge, 2003. The man shouts at the girls, "If gays can marry, legal incest and bigamy will come next. It's inevitable." In the fourth and final segment, one of the two girls yells back, "Dude, I don't think this slope is nearly as slippery as you think it is." The man turns away, saying, "Oh, shut up." Through these examples, you can see the implausible ripple effect of court cases and the slippery slope arguments in action. The straw man fallacy is committed when a person distorts or misrepresents the opponent's argument, thus making it easier to knock it down or refute it. This tactic is particularly common in political rhetoric over controversial issues. In this accompanying example, the headline reads, "The straw man, misrepresenting someone's argument to make it easier to refute." In the first segment, the student says, "And given my contributions to this paper, I think that I deserve to share credit with the first author." The professor then replies, saying, "So fame is more important to you than science, huh? That's sad." In the next segment, the student replies, "What? I didn't say that." The professor responds, saying, "Oh, so now I'm senile too?" The misrepresentation of the bearded man is obvious as he draws unwarranted conclusions. In conclusions, arguments should be logical and well supported. Understanding flaws in argumentation improves one's own credibility and ability to argue.